nightclubs to the biggest stadiums there are here. We've done them all.
Brilliant. Well, look forward to the tour.
Yeah, we do.
Anyway, there's been a chill on the high street this winter with well-known names from Comet to Blockbuster going under.
Yes, each week, though, many more local shops disappear with no fanfare, and it's because landlords have pushed their rents up, often by thousands of pounds a year. Here's Declan Curry.
This high street in Crouch End in North London is no different to any other around the country. Shops are feeling the pinch, and with household names going bust, it's no wonder businesses are worried about their future. As we rein in our spending, more businesses are going out of business, and one of their biggest outgoings is rent. Whether you rent office space, a restaurant or retail property, you might be finding it hard to meet a hefty rent bill in the current economic climate. So, what are businesses paying on this high street? In 2002, this grocer's was paying £20,000 a year. In 2012, it paid £33,000. This fishmonger's was paying £34,500. Last year, it was a whopping £52,000. Rent increases are manageable when the economy is growing, but when a business's takings drop, paying a high rent becomes a problem. This shoe shop has been here since 2004, when they were paying £30,000 a year. Now it's nearly £50,000.
Up till probably 18 months ago, I'd say our average turnover annually would be between £400,000 to £450,000 a year. I'd say we're down at least 30%.
Can you afford to stay in business?
That is very questionable. At the moment, I'm funding my business out of my personal funds, and that's the only way we keep going. But we're very much a business in danger.
So with the high street in trouble, some shopkeepers are finding their rents are more than their business can cope with. Well, it all seems a bit bleak. I think I need to have a cup of coffee just to recover.
We've been here for 4 years now, and our rent has gone up from 18,000 up to 23,000 now.
That's a huge increase.
It is, and it's constantly going up. About 65% of our outgoings is just rent alone.
So the landlord's getting a pay rise all the time. When's the last time you got a pay rise?
We just took a pay cut.
Is everyone in the same boat?
Once you're already in the lease, landlords seem reluctant to negotiate. We know of 2 businesses that have closed the doors for this very reason, and then new tenants have been able to negotiate a lower starting rent.
So if a new coffee shop comes along, they can get a better deal than you can?
Absolutely.
Rents vary across the country. This shop is 700 square foot. On London's Bond Street, it would cost you around £350,000 a year. A similar prime spot in Birmingham would be closer to £140,000, and in Manchester £120,000. Many businesses are struggling with high rents and dropping income. Some have no escape, locked into long, expensive and inflexible leases.
The problem with rents are that they are unresponsive to what's actually going on the high street. Small businesses still have to incur costs in terms of their raw materials, they still have to pay staff, they have to pay the rates, they have to pay the rents. But rents are going to keep going up, and while small businesses are struggling, it's going to make it very difficult for them to be able to compete, and many might even consider moving elsewhere, maybe where it's cheaper, or maybe actually going out of business altogether.
Judy Chu runs a shop at the opposite end of the high street. Her rent more than doubled over 10 years, and last year her landlord wanted another 20%, so she fought back.
I stood at my door and I looked out and I looked at the awash of to-let boards just within 10 shops of my shop. I took photographs of what was in my area. Some of these shops, they'd been there for 30 years and they'd closed. I just said to them, I can't do it. Do you want another board in my shop? I appealed. I said 20% was unrealistic. They asked me what I was prepared to pay, and I looked at the rate of inflation. I said 3.5, I'm prepared to pay 5%. And they came back and they more or less agreed that.
Landlords say they have to make a living, and of course they do. But what Judy has shown is that some are willing to negotiate. And in tough financial times, for some businesses, it could make the difference between staying afloat and going under.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, Declan is here now to talk about this a little bit more. So if so many shops are empty, Declan, why can't landlords just reduce rent? Get them in, get business going?
Some landlords say they can't. because the rent agreement they've got with the shop owner says that when rents are reviewed, they will only go up. An awful lot of rental agreements have that written into them. The other reason is that some of them just won't, because they've got into property because they want the rent, but they also want the property to keep its value. And their worry would be if they cut the rent, the property value will fall as well, so they end up paying twice.
Okay. And as Matt mentioned earlier, already this year, you know, we've seen big high street chains like Jessops and Blockbuster, and the one everybody's talking, of course, is HMV. But there's some news today on HMV, isn't there?
Yeah, this is really interesting. HMV is now effectively being controlled by a company called Hilco, which is a turnaround specialist. The interesting bit is that we hear this afternoon that Hilco is also interested in buying the Jessops brand name. Not the Jessops shops, but the name. Now, that could mean, if it ends up with both, that you might see Jessops cameras on sale in HMV. So it makes HMV a bit more distinctive. The one to watch, though, is the record companies and the movie studios. Because if they don't have HMV selling their CDs and their DVDs, they have to do more business with Tesco, with Amazon, with Apple. And they are tough businesses to negotiate with. So it's in their interest that something like HMV survives.
John, you're nodding along there. You had a strong relationship with HMV.